lovers. It is Jesus here, and I'm here with special guest,
Abbey!
We are here today to do the Bookish Friends tag. This tag was created by Robotnik. Unfortunately, the video has since been deleted. But I did this tag originally with Kat from Stars and Embers a few years ago. I have another bookish friend. I have 2 bookish friends now. Yay! I'm joking. I've got you guys in the community. We're good. I really wanted to do this tag because I really loved the questions, and I reckon we're just gonna have a really cool conversation. And I want to introduce you guys to Abbey if you haven't met her yet.
Really excited.
She's cool.
I am.
I guess we're just gonna have a good time. I don't know what else to say. We're just doing dance moves.
That's all I do, honestly.
Honestly.
Books and dance.
we should start a band.
Yes.
I'm gonna get on with the questions now. How and when did you find each other's channels? Oh, are you okay?
Sorry,
Sorry, I thought my husband was dying. Let's keep going. How and when did you find each other's channels?
Technically you found me, but
yes,
we had both been on BookTube for a very long time because we both joined in 2015. I don't know why, like I feel like I was like a kind of like a June start maybe, or maybe a couple months later, but I definitely know that you found me, and I think you commented on my BookTube newbie tag.
Maybe. That was the easiest way to find people from a very early stage in BookTube. I did look up a few BookTube newbie tags back when I was starting in 2015. I ended up starting back in October 2015. I only remember this because it was 2 weeks before my birthday. Eventually I started posting consistently. I started to get into the groove and see new people. I noticed that Abbey had an Australian accent. I was thinking, she's Aussie.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And we always unite, don't we, like us Aussies? Like every time I find an Aussie, I'm like, oh, person I can follow.
Yes, even though the BookTube community is getting larger and there are a lot more Aussies joining in the BookTube community, it still feels like a small community of people.
I know. There's a few of us that did start at the same time, and we all still feel pretty like linked up because we're the original like Aussies that we only the ones we found really, but like a lot of us were like together for a lot of that. And it's funny because like I do remember like there's videos that you posted where I saw like, I think one of the ones that I remember is your first intimidating books tag.
Oh yeah.
And I remember you doing that one, and I also remember there was one that you did with like a TBR jar, and I think it was the 2016.
Oh my goodness, thing. Yes. That's when you know it's 2016 because I do not do TBR jars anymore.
Seriously, since then I've just consistently kept up with watching your videos. I feel like I've been like such a part of like so many of the things that have happened in your life, and then it's like we've literally just met this morning.
Which leads into the next question. How and when did you meet? This morning! This is so ironic because I've known Australian booktubers for a little bit longer. Like I knew Katrina at the Little Book Owl before I started BookTube.
Yeah.
I did end up meeting her ages ago.
Yeah.
And we are friends. It's really funny because there are still some OGs that I still have not met.
Yeah.
And I feel like you're probably the person in the Australian BookTube community that I've probably known for the longest time that I've only met today.
I know, that's how I feel the same. It's like there was people that I had early on, but I feel like there's people that I have like followed when I first started that I would not even be able to tell you what their channels are anymore because they either stopped or they went away. But I feel like you're the one that's like been consistent the longest, as I said before. We've always been like, you know, following each other's circles. We always mention each other. We always kind of do a lot of similar stuff. So this is why this is so surreal because I'm here.
It was kind of cool that you reached out because you recently met Kat. When I saw you met Kat, I got so excited because I know Kat. That would have just been absolutely fun for you.
It was an amazing experience getting to meet her and actually to go to Melbourne because I'd never been to Melbourne. So obviously the main reason I went to meet her was so we could see the Wiggles performance, but I could have seen that in Sydney or I could have seen it somewhere else, and I'm like, you know what, no, I'm going to take this opportunity and meet someone and actually start doing stuff. Yeah. But it was after you were posting stuff and you did send me a friend's request that I was like,
yeah, I was like,
you know
yes, that's Abbey.
I'm gonna message you and I'm just gonna see, and then you were like, yeah, let's do it, and now we're here.
Abbey slid into my DMs.
I literally did.
And here we are. Which section of the bookshop would you hang out in the longest, or the taste in genre, or I'm gonna mention category, that you have the most in common?
We can actually take this into practice because we did just go book shopping today.
See,
so
this was a test to see.
And we like nothing.
We had nothing in common.
No, it was I'm going.
Why are you even here? Get out.
Honestly, the thing was that I kept wanting to go into every single contemporary section, and I always ended up at the as seen on TikTok display, so that's where I was most of the day. And then also I'd said the YA section because it's just fun to look at the YA books to see what there is, but I didn't buy any YA books. It was all contemporary.
I'd say the same. Like I always go to the young adult section, but I don't buy young adult books that much anymore.
All I'll do is I'll go, oh, it's that that book and it's that book, and it's all things I've already read and enjoyed, but I don't really strive to find more at the moment. I will mainly just online shop young adult when I feel like it, but when I'm actually in bookstores, I'm like, I don't know what I want to do. I'm just strolling.
It's because we have the algorithm. I'd say that contemporary romance area is where we would both go, and like we'd also have pretty heated discussions about some books.
Yeah, I know. That's what we were doing. We'd be there for like 10 extra minutes because we had to like hash out our feelings on every certain book that we saw. We didn't actually disagree really that much though,
I don't think that we did.
No.
Like when we were at the cafe, we were talking about Love Her or Lose Her. We did have a good nuanced conversation.
Yeah, that one was good.
Other than that, I don't think we've disagreed on anything.
No, not really.
But like strongly.
Really
we've had
good.
a civil adult conversation about these books.
Yeah, it's just lovely.
Which part of the bookstore would you split up to browse? Or the taste in genre you don't have in common? And for this one, I'd say manga.
And it's ironic because I stayed with you the whole time.
It was a test. I mean, you failed, but...
I know. I was just like, oh, that one's pretty, and you're like, they die, and I'm like, oh, it's awful.
You kept on mentioning like, oh yeah, I've seen you talk about this on your channel.
I know this one.
I'm like, yeah, that's violent.
Even though it's not something I understand, I still will stay with the person for the conversation. So it's technically true that it's like, we don't generally split, we just both go where the other one goes. I would also say the same if you go to non-fiction. I'm not a really big fan of non-fiction sides of stuff, so that includes poetry and all that kind of stuff. So that's not something that I really go to either. But I definitely think I'd say, manga and graphic novels would be split genre.
Especially because manga in the last few years I've spent a lot of time in those sections. Before it used to just be mostly graphic novels and comics, but now I'm just like big manga buff. Even just being part of what I do as a career, like all the product knowledge and everything, it all builds up for me. So that takes time in my browsing as well.
Yeah, that's good. Like, because you were doing that where you're like, we published this one and we did this one, and I'm like, that's so exciting. I loved it every time. I'm like, oh my god, tell me more.
Name a book you bought because of your bookish friend. I actually did not prepare for this question. I'm trying to think.
Many, I will just tell you.
Yeah, because like there's probably many that I purchased because of Abbey. But I would probably have to say originally I was more interested in reading Jennifer L. Armentrout's books because you talked about them.
Oh yeah, that's cool to know.
I put them off for such a long time. So you and also like a few other booktubers back in the day, but I remember you actually talking about Wine Hot Kiss back in the day.
I did talk about it quite a lot. I still will though, so it's not like it's something that I'm like, it's not great anymore, but that's good to know, like, because I know, I think because it's been a few times that you would mention me when you talk about it, I'm just like, yes, I got you up. She gotta read them.
I think what's difficult now is that I've watched Abbey for 6 years, so there are some books that I think to myself, I'm trying to remember who recommended them to me, but I know for a fact that a lot of the Jennifer L. Armentrout books you would talk about, so that's how I'd know. Abbey definitely did talk about this at some point, and that's what actually gave me motivation to pick them up. I didn't necessarily pick the Dark Elements series up quickly, but that's because I didn't like the covers. But I was more motivated when they changed the covers.
I know, that's one of my main things to talk about is them covers. But it's ironic because I was going to say that with From Blood and Ash is something that you've made me want to read again though, because I was like OG Jennifer L. Armentrout, but you're the like the newer stuff.
I'm the new generation.
With the Harbinger series.
Or just Dark Elements Part 2.
Dark Elements, yeah. When I found out that that was about Zane, I was like, why did I not know this? I'm meant to be the fan. And I bought those books, but I also bought These Hollow Vows because you kept talking about it.
Yes, I love that
I was
series.
like, I really want to read it, but then also like the Craze series, because it's something you do mention often, I'm like, I need to get these. Like, these are books that it's like, I've only seen you talk about them, and then I'm like, why am I missing out on all these releases? Like, where have I been? Even though I haven't gone anywhere.
I think it's mostly because now Instagram is influencing my reading taste. I do get recommendations from BookTube. You're like one of the only booktubers I watch who have very similar taste to me.
Yeah, okay.
There's so many other booktubers I watch who have like taste in high fantasy series that I can't see myself reading anytime soon, but I love hearing their perspective on certain books. Yeah, a lot of the time they don't like From Blood and Ash, so a lot of the time when I'm talking to my channel about From Blood and Ash, I end up mentioning like it's not that loved, but it's probably because I'm watching booktubers who don't necessarily like it, but that's because I like watching booktubers with different perspectives, whereas with your channel it's different.
That's why it's been so fun for me too that you've gone into adult contemporary, because now I can be like, read this one, because before you were like, oh no, I'm not as much into contemporary, but now that I see it, same as we did that 12 books of like...
Yes, see, you recommended Red, White and Royal Blue. Yeah. I actually purchased that book because of Kat, because Kat talked about it a lot and she recommended it, but you endorsing it again.
That's why I was like, but same thing is like, like most of those people gave you contemporaries, and I was like, this is so exciting because these like I
Yes.
couldn't pick one and they're all on the list.
You were literally the first one though.
Yeah, I know. I feel like I saw the post and I'm like, oh my god, I'm gonna make you read this book.
I love how I got 2 Casey McQuiston books, and one of them was from my sister who had no idea who Casey McQuiston was. She just pointed to it and she's like, read that one. Name a book you both read and loved.
I do have similar tastes, but now I gotta think.
I mean, I wrote a couple down.
Okay, no, I want to know.
It happened one summer. Like, we both loved
it.
that one. Like,
it was a good book.
It's one of my favorite Tessa Bailey books. I've talked about like Love Her or Lose Her.
Yeah.
In our earlier conversation.
Yeah.
That being my favorite. But It Happened One Summer is like my close second.
Not that there's different reasons that we liked it, but for me the like turning point for me wanting to read it was that it's Schitt's Creek inspired, and that is one of my favorite shows. So I liked having the whole, you know, she has to lose the money and then she's got to realize what she wants to do in her life, and her whole journey was so good to me, but it still reminded me of that character. But I feel like because you've only watched a couple of episodes of that show, it's still a different experience, which is really interesting. I think obviously it's like we're all going to take something different away, but the fact that we both enjoyed it even though we have different feelings, which is really interesting.
That's exactly what I was thinking about. I'm definitely into the whole premise of Schitt's Creek. I still haven't continued on. Seeing like the parallels, but also I don't know the character of Alexis that much.
Yeah.
Because I haven't watched it that much. However, I know Piper even more.
Yeah.
But it was easy to not associate them two.
Yeah.
Where it would probably be easier to draw parallels if you were to have watched it.
And that's why like I feel like, because here it's like you're only reading one book to get the full journey, but you've got to go through 6 seasons to see her overarching, getting better, like deciding what she wants to do in her life as well, and it's like a longer process. So like, as you've only watched a couple of episodes, you're only still in the first bit where she's still just like, I'm still spoiled and rich and I want to get out of here. But like with the book we get to see that like happen quicker, but also organically as well, which is really nice.
I'd have to say that you talking about Tessa Bailey just really encouraged me to pick more of her books up.
Yeah.
Like, she's become one of my favorite authors now. I love Tessa Bailey's works.
Amazing.
I'm pretty sure like we stand very similarly on the Sarah J Maas books.
Oh, of course.
Yes.
Like I feel like always, like, not that I've ever like lost touch with Sarah J Maas, but I feel like whenever I would see you talk about it and then I talk about it, it'd just be nice that we're both like, we try to keep up to date with it. And Sarah J Maas is like one author that I'm like, I have to know what's happening, I have to be part of the story. All of her technically 3 series that she's doing, we've all enjoyed them and like had a really fun time with it and have quite similar views. And obviously there's so many characters and different things that happen that there is times when we'll think something different about certain things, but it's still an overall love of it, which is really good.
I feel like our opinions are pretty similar there. Even after like my unpopular opinions book tag, you kind of like, I think you commented on one of my comments on it. I was thinking, oh, I feel understood. It kind of feels good to like have those conversations about it. It's funny because we've been on BookTube for 6 years, but it feels like we've grown up reading these books.
Yeah, like, I mean, I started Throne of Glass when only Air of Fire had come out.
Me
so
too.
That's when I got to. And then Throne of Glass came out a couple of months later. So it's like nearly like 10 books that we've like seen come out and had to go through. Like even with like Cassandra Clare, I mean, I'm behind on Cassandra Clare. I need to catch up, but they're so big, the books, so it's hard. But she's someone that I've been reading since I was probably like 12 and now I'm 24. It just keeps going, and I feel like I grow with the series as she grows as a writer. So I think it's the same with Sarah, which is really cool. And that's why when I got to see her live, I was like, this is like so amazing, because it's like I've been growing with these books and then she's right there. I'm like, oh my god.
Also, Daughter of Smoke and Burn.
Yes.
It's very funny because you probably witnessed me in the 6 years of me being on BookTube not liking it the first time I read it, and then seeing me go from that to rereading it last year and absolutely loving it. And I think the reason why I had the drive to reread it is because I see you and a few other booktubers be like, this series is phenomenal. So it gave me the drive to give it a second chance.
I'm glad you did, but it is funny with that because like for me it's always the first book that's been my favorite. Once it goes into more like war and political side of things and the second two, I wasn't as invested, and I still haven't read the third one, which is ironic because it's like people, whenever I talk about it, people do assume that I have finished it, and I'm like, I still don't know what happens in the end. But it's like I've always been a stand for like, you gotta read the first book, because that's still something that just like really resonates with me, because it's just like there was a feeling about when I was reading that book that I haven't had with any other book. What I did see when you say, oh, I'm not really a big fan, I was like, how?
I know.
Then when you reread it, I was just like, this is the best. Good, you change your mind.
This series is phenomenal. If you're not sure, if you're on the edge about it, I used my situation as an example. I kept the books on my shelves because I was conflicted for such a very long time. It is worth rereading.
Definitely.
To retry. You get so much more out of it. If you didn't get it the first time, and if you feel like you just didn't have enough energy, probably save your energy for it, because it's a wild ride that you actually don't want to miss. Then Sam at Thoughts on Terms, like when I saw her get into it, I take a lot of recommendations from Sam.
I do as well. Love watching her reviews and everything. mean. Like, she's someone that I can really like trust with her opinions on books, and it's really good to watch her.
I really loved the fact that I feel like her videos got me to want to give the series a second chance as well.
Yeah.
I reckon that it's one of those series where if you don't click with it the first time, just give it a second shot. But I would highly recommend you at least try to get through book 3. Or maybe reread the books.
I know. Well, I already did reread the first one, and then I read the second one, and then I was like, yeah, and then just never got to the third one. But I think I remember enough, though. I find that she does have that dense kind of writing that it can be hard to get through. I will get to the third book, but probably it's just not priority. So many things to read, but I'll eventually do it.
Name a book that you both read in which one of you hated it and one of you loved it.
I'm trying to think, really.
I came prepared. It's okay.
You wouldn't know what you've got prepared.
Okay, 3.
Oh my god.
Your opinions might have changed on these, because I went to your Goodreads. All of these were 5 stars. Mine were ranging between like 2 and 3 stars.
Oh, so these are books that I liked and you didn't like, so it didn't go the other way.
No, because I think when you're on Goodreads, for some reason, it shows all of your 5-star reads. It shows my rating compared to your 5-star reads. Maybe I didn't look into the setting, unless you see a book on my shelf right now that I always talk about and you despise. First of all, Unearthed by Amy Kaufman and Megan Spooner.
I gave that 5 stars.
You did.
Okay.
Well, it was one of your favorites for the years, actually. I looked at your list.
It was.
I looked at your list.
Unearthed.
You have the most organized Goodreads.
I know.
swear.
I love it to be nice and neat.
Yes. I was thinking, you've got your top list for every year? What? It's on one of your top lists.
Oh, definitely at the time I enjoyed it, but it's a book that I've forgotten about. Because I remember there was a lot of issues, like, I mean, I don't know if this was something you didn't like, but the love story people didn't.
That's exactly what I didn't like.
So I don't know why I liked it, and I have the second book, but I like never continued on. So it's not something that I'm just like, like it's something that it's just like I may have read it back in the time, because I did read it quite a few years ago. Not that it's mellowed out, like I wouldn't say that I dislike it now. Like I still enjoyed it, but probably wouldn't rate it that highly if I've forgotten so much about it by now.
The Dark Element series I don't love as much as you do, but that's because you read it like at an earlier stage, whereas I read it at 25.
I would have been 18 because I read it at the start of my channel, so it's kind of like, better time to read it. Because when I started reading, like I started my booktube and I was still one of those people that had like Twilight and Vampire Academy and Fallen and all those series, and they're not bad series, but it was like I hadn't widened my horizon yet. So when I first read it, I thought it was like the best thing ever. I was like, this is so different. What is this? This is like demons and stuff. And now, I mean, I've probably read at least half of what you have here as well, so you start to branch out and have different reading. Probably if I did reread it now, I might have like lesser opinions, but I think nostalgia would probably win out for me because I do still appreciate the series.
And the last one I have to mention is probably one that you've just seen on my on hold pile. I like the first part of the series. I talk about the series on my channel a lot, so you probably know
I'm in suspense though. I feel like I'm gonna know it.
You rated The Beauty of Darkness 5 stars. What were you thinking? I know a lot of people do, but like, what were you thinking?
I liked it okay. Even though
that toxic romance.
As you keep talking about it, makes me question myself. I'm like, what do I even know about anything anymore? Because
a lot of people were blinded by it.
But I will say, like, the first book I appreciated a lot more, but like the last one is very long, I will admit, and like I feel like a lot of the political stuff I just went over my head. So there's probably things that I just like.
But the political stuff's the most interesting part of it.
Interesting, yeah, but I feel like maybe even with a love story, I just saw what I wanted to see, and that's why when you were reading it, you obviously had the mind of being like, this isn't right, and I was just like, oh, they're in love. It's where I was just come out of the book from. It's funny. Back then, because I did read it like probably 4 years ago, or probably even earlier. Yeah, I read it when it first came out. At the time, it wasn't really something we were all concerned about, is how men would shout and do things, and obviously it's like from years from now, if I were to read books, I'd be like, it's not right, that's not how you treat people. Like I feel like it's one of those things that have like grown with the community of like all the things that we're like, that's really not okay to like act towards people. But like still, like as time has gone by, I feel like my opinions probably would change, but a lot of the time I don't really change my Goodreads ratings. Like I just leave them
unless you reread.
Reread, yeah.
I come in hot with this series a lot. No offense to anyone. As I mentioned, we hate Prince Rafferty in this house. Any for me?
To just like everything apparently. Oh, what about The Cruel Prince? You
I love The Cruel Prince. Yeah, I really do.
And I'm here like talking trash about it all the time.
I can totally see why you do. I think I like The Cruel Prince because I know the overall story. I understand why people don't like it, because it's not that fleshed out. We don't actually get Carden's perspective. Yeah. So we actually don't know how troubling his mind must be a lot of the time. I can totally see why. But yeah, no, I love The Cruel Prince. I love Jude and Carden.
As I'm talking, I'm remembering more because also Dark Shade of Magic is a series series
Oh,
do you
yeah.
like? I'm not a fan, and I've only read the first two, but I do plan on giving it a reread. Like, I want to give it a second go, and hopefully my daughter and smoke and bone it, but I don't know. And Children of Blood and Bone.
I love the first book, hated the second book.
Okay.
So, but then again, that's a popular opinion for people who loved the first book. I feel like the people who loved the first book were alienated after book 2. Yeah. Now we're waiting years for book 3.
And isn't it meant to be like 7?
I can see it being a quartet, because after the ending of book 2, there's no way the next one will be the finale.
Yeah.
But 7 books, like...
And it's like, the first one came out in like 2017 or 18 or something. Like, it's been quite a while. Now the TV show's coming. I think that's where her focus is going to go. I own the second one, but I just have never read it. I was still like bitter from my experience of the first one. Like, I'm actually going to read it this month because I'm going to read it for my Magical Readathon TBR. So I'll see how it goes. I may not have fun.
I reckon that if I was to reread it with the perspective I know now on the series, probably will not love it that much. But I intensively loved it when I first read it. So I can totally understand.
That's why it was so funny when you were like, I love it so much, and I'm like, I think it sucks. Like, what do I do? Like, there was one time, like, we always have very similar reading, but it does happen in certain circumstances, and it's funny because as you didn't like Prince Rafferty, I just didn't like the Cruel Prince because of the bullying. So like,
Inan,
as I said,
Inan and Carden,
like, so like, as I said, that's a book I read a lot later, so it's something that I could see when I was reading it, but for some reason, being in darkness, it just wasn't something I focused on. But it just shows how we all progress as different readers and what things that we see and like appreciate. A lot of the time I'll like a book, but then another book I'll hate it, and it's the same plot, it's the same story, it's the same elements, but just for some reason you can't stand it in certain stories.
I'm okay with like hate to love romances as long as there's not much humiliation involved.
Yeah.
And that's ironic because Carden, he usually does certain things because of his court circumstances, but he has to do it in order to keep Jude safe. Whereas in the Rafferty situation, he wasn't trying to keep her safe by like humiliating her. He was humiliating her to make a point. So there's like a difference.
But she also got humiliated by the other character that was in it, who was part of the love triangle, because they were doing stuff like parading her around when she was...
Yes, exactly.
So that's the same thing.
The difference is that parade, I believe, happened earlier in the series. Hayden was apologetic about it, whereas Rafferty never apologized and kept on saying, I did this to protect you.
Yeah, and it's
you
just
don't
like,
hide behind that. We've gone on a tangent, but find it funny, and you've mentioned it, how we see these things differently. Yeah. And I can see why you find Carden detestable, and you can see why I find Rafferty detestable.
Yes, I can.
Name a book you want each other to read.
I did not come prepared. There's like so many contemporaries that I probably want you to read, honestly, and you have been starting to get through them, but like, I say like, I mean, I feel like everything you have, have you read everything? No. Like, if you haven't read this one.
I have not yet read The Kiss Quotient. I really do want to read it.
So, like, obviously these are books that you do want to end up reading, but you also read at a speed that just does not make sense to me, that I wouldn't even know when to recommend things or something. Like, you'd be like, I've read that one, that one's dead.
Yeah, definitely. That's why it was good for you to ask me.
Obviously, so read any contemporaries. Like, I always recommend them, and especially too, like, I think when you see me with a new contemporary, you'd be like, oh, I'll probably read that one too. Yeah. But even as a random one, Shipped by Angie Hockman, I don't know if that's on your radar, but I've talked about it a lot in the last year.
Yeah, you've talked about it a lot. I haven't purchased it yet.
But it's so good. It's corny, and it's based on a cruise ship, but it just brought me so much joy that I feel like you probably appreciate it now that you're in the contemporary spirit of things. So
I would, yes.
A recommendation you don't have.
I would recommend the series because I just feel like you need to read it already. Please read the Harbinger trilogy. Yes, this is like the exclusive cover, but
it's so pretty though.
Yes, I got the Gemlin Sea art. I love it. But read it.
Basically, we both need to read everything Jennifer Trout.
So I do. I've got a bunch of her books on my TBR, and some of them on audio because I cannot stand some of the covers.
And I own all the ugly covers.
The Titan series, I cannot with.
No, I've seen those covers. They're so bad.
You were one of the first people I heard talk about the Dark Element series.
Yeah.
Just know you haven't read the Harbinger series yet.
I know. Like, that's...
I would love you to just read it.
Like, how disconnected was I that it literally took you talking about this for many months before I even knew what it was, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, how did I not know that there's this new story? But also, like, see, this will be my unpopular opinion, but like, Zane always bothered me because I liked my side of the love triangle, but I want to have redemption for him when I read these books because I think that's gonna happen.
I think I went into the Dark Elements with a different perspective because I read Storm and Fury first, and then realized, oh, this is a spin-off to the Dark Elements, so I went back. I went into that series seeing Zane as Bay, essentially, and I hated seeing the way that he was treated, so I can understand why a lot of people love Roth, because people are gravitated towards Roth, whereas I had an attachment to Zane because I went into this book. Whereas a lot of people will read The Dark Elements and be like, he's just the other side of the love triangle. He doesn't really matter. But I reckon you knowing that there's a spin-off now will probably help shift your perspective a little bit. Yeah. But then again, I would recommend you probably reread The Dark Elements before going into this.
If I do a reread, I still will have Roth in this like really nice light, which I will appreciate, but then at least I know like I've got to be like, give Zane a chance. It's not that I like hate him, it's not like he's a bad character, it's just the way that they wrote him as to be the spare can be hard to like then have to read a spin-off for those characters. Yeah.
And Ross is also yikes.
I'll like just die. We've all coughed now, it's all happened.
Roth is technically a side character in this series as well that makes cameos. Ross and Layla come in every once in a while. They're not like main characters, but knowing that they're there and knowing like the references, and there's something that happens in the series that will make you so happy if you've read the original and like you were heartbroken in the third book about a tattoo, maybe. Yes.
I think I know.
I reckon that you will love the callbacks. Love this story so much because it's very fleshed out. It's not just focusing on the romance.
It's on my list. I at least own them physically, so I'm like gonna do it. Maybe at some point next year. But
we literally have 9 months of this year. You're making me wait this long.
I'll put it on priority. I'm in the middle of like 6 different books, so I gotta like try and finish some stuff and then try to read new things.
I guess that's gonna be it for this video today, book lovers. If you happen to stay till the end of the video, leave us.
Just totally stressed out emoji because like I'm feeling it. He's the one that I use, and he's just like, oh my god, I'm dying.
So Abby, where can they find you?
Well, I'm at Abbey the Booklover, so I am on Instagram, YouTube. I should start with YouTube, but anyway, Twitter, bit as much. If you just go Abbey, you will find me on any of the socials. I'm generally active everywhere. You will see my face.
If you like the content that I read and talk about, I'm pretty sure you're gonna like Abby's channel. So subscribe, click the links down below. Got you sorted. If you happen to enjoy this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet already. Join the amazing community of book lovers. And also, I have social media. I'm at GSwizzleBooks on Twitter and Instagram, and I'm also Goodreads. That's www.goodreads.com/gswizzle. And finally, I'm at TikTok. I'm at GSwizzle on TikTok if you want to follow me there for some bookish content.
Yay!
Every time. Alright.
I'm just like, bye, and I just cut.
We love you, book lovers. Yay! We will see you later. Peace.
Thought that I would have when I flipped it in a double. Thought that I would have when I flipped it in a double.